And our meeting tonight is now open for sharing testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Pilar from New York, go ahead.
Good evening. I just want to express my gratitude from a healing I had a few days ago. While I was at work, I started having some chest discomfort, pain, and I called the practitioner from this church, and she very emphatically denied rebuked the error, and her strong words just kind of woke me up about what error was trying to do with this feeling of chest pains and so on and so forth. I went back to work, and after a few, by the end of the day, that discomfort had disappeared. I am very grateful for this quick healing, and very grateful for all the resources that are available in the website. They're really a matter of comfort to me, especially when thoughts start flying around in my head. So it just brings me back to what is real and what I really need to be focusing, which is God. Thank you for the beautiful readings, the music, and thank you again for this church. Good night.
Thank you. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Good evening. I suspect that a hymn, one of our hymns, sums up what I have to say. A grateful heart a garden is, and it really means that very thing. Over the weekend, I discovered that I could not hear out of my left ear. Early Monday morning, I called a practitioner, and she suggested that I read Eyes and Ears by Bricknell Young. So I made a copy of it so I could refer to it frequently. During the day, I also reviewed the statement in Science and Health. A spiritual idea has not a single element of error, and this truth removes properly whatever is offensive. In mid-afternoon, all of a sudden, my left ear started popping, just as if I was changing altitude very quickly. And as I was shaving Monday night, I discovered that I could hear the brazier. And my ear has been perfect ever since. I am most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
First of all, I'm grateful that tonight Benjamin is doing the mix and I get to sit in the congregation, so I'm really happy about that. Thank you. I had the opportunity to spend this past Thanksgiving with some fellow church members, and it was such a wonderful, peaceful day that I felt I had to give gratitude for it. When I first arrived in Plainfield, and honestly for most of my life before that, I always felt like the odd man out. Between moving so frequently and other things that happened, I just felt like I was not worth as much as others and thought that sooner or later the people around me would figure that out. And even after coming here, it was a tough belief to get rid of. So when I realized last Friday how at ease and in the moment I felt all day on Thanksgiving, I was overjoyed. I was so completely in my right place on Thursday that even my inner thoughts, which are usually going over work and things I need to do, even those thoughts were quiet. I can't even remember a time in my whole life where I was so at peace. And of course, I don't want to leave the impression it was a slow day. We still had the service and cooking and making videos and working on the website afterward. But this combination of busy yet peaceful gave me a better sense of what Mary Baker Eddy meant when she wrote on page 519 of Science and Health that quote, God rests in action, end quote. I'm very grateful for all the blessings that Christian Science has brought to my life. Everything I did and knew and learned before Plainfield only served to bring me further from peace, joy, and purpose. Everything I have learned since coming to this church has led me closer to God and to who He made me to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Diana from Berlin and Vienna. I'm in Berlin now, and I would like to express my gratitude for the roundtable discussion on December 1st. There was so much in that discussion: the handling of animal magnetism, the truth about America's founding fathers, the great need to protect liberty and keep ourselves out of forms of enslavement, and so much more. I am listening to it over and over again. Two statements I wrote down from the discussion that are bringing me a lot of comfort are: first, keep walking through whatever problem you have, and it will have no permanent effect on you because it is godless. And second, to bring every thought into the obedience of Christ is our weapon and our security. I am extremely grateful to have found the Plainfield Church, this remnant of true teaching of Mary Baker Eddy and Christ's Christianity. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne from Florida, go ahead.
Thank you. The other day while I was riding my bike, I made a sharp turn and lost my balance. Both my bike and I fell sharply to the ground. I lay there for a moment and immediately declared, God good, and that I could never fall out of God's love. I also knew, as Mrs. Eddy has said, if you fall down and break your leg, rise up and declare it can only do you good. So that's what I did. I got up, brushed myself off, got back on my bike, and rode home. The rest of the day, my legs and knees felt sore and bruised, but I kept praying, knowing that since God is the only cause and governed this day and me, then the only effect I could have today was one of good. That only good had gone on and was still going on, and I held on to those thoughts. When I awoke the next morning, all pain in my knees and legs was gone, and I was able to take my daily walk and bike ride without any discomfort at all. This is quite a difference from a bike fall I had 10 years ago, where I was incapacitated for several weeks. At that time, I did not promptly and persistently use my Christian Science teaching. I am so grateful for the Christian Science that I was taught in this church, and for the practitioner here who is helping me to be consistent and steady in this teaching, not to accept negative thoughts and experiences and fall under them without protest, but to rise up and promptly and persistently affirm statements of truth. This healing was a wonderful lesson for me, and I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio, go ahead.
I'm so grateful for all God has provided and for the better understanding of Christian Science here at Plainfield. Most recently, I was made aware by my practitioner of the war of spirit and error. Now, the word war to me means more than just the struggle, but to be always alert in our thinking of the subtlety of error with the defense of Christian Science and the Bible. To take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to understand in the evil day, and having done all to stand, Ephesians 6:13, and also Psalm 73:26. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God, in the strength of my heart, and my portion forever. I'm so very grateful to God, my patient practitioner, Christian Science, and this church for the many blessings received. Thank you for tonight's reading, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Chardell.
Good evening.
Tonight, I wish to express my gratitude for Christian Science and how this truth reaches out to everyone. I have a friend who has had issues with mental health. Some time ago, I offered her Christian Science material, which she reads, but her very favorite is Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Just the other day, after I read the Unity Watch from November 26th, where it says, "Ho, everyone that thirsteth, come ye," she said, "That's it. That is what happens when I read Science and Health. It feels like I'm being fed." And she repeated this. I confirmed what she is feeling and said that this really is what happens. I am so happy that she finds comfort and peace from reading Mary Baker Eddy's little book. Thank you for the beautiful readings and our wonderful music.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for the readings tonight and the beautiful music before. Tonight I want to express my gratitude for the many blessings that have come from participating here and regular practitioner support. One of the things that I was recently thinking about, I was very grateful for when I was looking on our website in the newsworthy section, and it was talking about people delivering books to China, delivering the Bible to China, and like 1 million. And it's just so profound to these people who are willing to risk their lives, and some have lost their lives doing this, but their love for it. And it just reminded me how grateful I was for our classes and the love for the Bible here. And actually, it's the classes that were one of the first things that drew me to this church, because I was looking, desiring to have a place that I could go and study the Bible and understand it better. And what I love is the day-to-day living of its precepts that are taught here. And it no longer feels like a mystery. I can see the golden thread that runs through. I'm so grateful for all the people who participate and share, and the interconnectedness that they bring to it, and the depth. And because I've learned the Bible, I've had a greater appreciation in Mrs. Eddy's writings, because I see how everything is based on the Bible. And I see things that I didn't see before because I didn't know the Bible. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm also very grateful to be learning how important the Bible was to our founding fathers. I was reading a book about Lincoln, and he, as a young man, one of the books he read and loved was the Bible, and he memorized Psalms. And there are just so many stories like that, and I know we'll be finding more for our Liberator coming up, and I'm very grateful because it makes me appreciate all that they did and what was behind what they did and why we need to protect it. I'm very grateful to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Bruce. I also would like to say thanks for the wonderful readings and the hymns. I love singing this last one we sang, Rock of Ages. It just gives me so much strength and confidence in Almighty God. The third verse starts, Christ the truth, foundation sure, on this rock we are secure. And it reminded me of a time that I experienced some time ago when I was going to go and be with some people, and I just knew that I was going to be asked a lot of questions. But I also, before I got in there, I got the idea, I'm sure this came from God, that if I said something that proved to be inaccurate, I would never hear the end of it. So I just felt that it was a fair warning. So I just went in there knowing that God was truth, and God knew what was. And if I don't hear it from God, it's not going to come from my mouth. And it proved to be very wise. I'm very thankful for that, because sure enough, the questions did come. And either I didn't answer them, or I says, well, let's see how this works out. I'm sure we'll find out what really is going on here. And just left it at that. And sure enough, later on, after this series of questions, something came up that illustrated exactly what was needed to be known. And when it came about, the question stopped, and I didn't even have to say anything because it was evident. So I'm so thankful to know that God is indeed truth, and it comes from Him, and that we can trust Him and rest in His truth. It's such a wonderful, comforting thing. I'm grateful to learn this, and I'm grateful for everything going on here in this church. Sharon from
New Jersey.
Oh, from New Jersey. Sharon from New Jersey. Go ahead.
Recently, I came down with a bad cough and a cold. I prayed and studied, and I realized I had all the symptoms of pneumonia and I needed help. So I called a practitioner in this church, and I was met with so much love. She agreed to help me and asked me to read by Mrs. Eddy, I've Got Cold and Miscellaneous Writings, and pages 390 to 393 in Science and Health. With this help, within 3 days, I was totally healed. I am so grateful to God, Mrs. Eddy, and practitioner for this quick and thorough healing, and I'm so happy to be a member here. And thank you for the readings.
Thank you. Lil.
Thank you for those wonderful readings and the beautiful music. I'm so grateful for God's love and healing power. A few years ago, I had a small growth on my shoulder for quite a while. And that winter, I did a lot of snow shoveling at home. With this was much rubbing of my clothing on the growth, and it got very sore and enlarged. One day the thought came so strong that I can't be punished for doing good, and stopped checking it. A few days later, I noticed it shrank, became hard, and touching it, it fell off. It was all gone. I knew that was God working and healing, and I'm just so grateful for His powerful love. And I thank God that He is always here for me and for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig.
I thank Fairley for those wonderful readings and very enlightening readings on strength. And strength comes in, strength is all sorts of strength, not just physical strength. And I realize that even more after she has gave readings, is moral strength, just do what is right no matter what's maybe the evidence before you. Mental strength, you just stick to it, to whatever is the right, in each case is what's right to do. Well, I ran into a little predicament. Well, more than a little. But I was running through situations where people weren't doing the right thing. They were arguing and not, and basically just getting angry about what they shouldn't instead of fixing. Well, the strength was I did all I could to calmly explain, and fix the problems. Explain that's not going to help, but what would help would be to pray and do the right thing. But that didn't do right in my situation. And I asked God, what do I do? And He told me, forgive them. And I said that because that took strength, because it took more strength than I had. And I said, God, can I really forgive them? Because it was bothering me too, that what they had been saying. But He said, forgive them. And as soon as I did that, and it happened several times, day or so later, the whole situation was healed. I had the opportunity to express love and relate it in these situations, and there was peace you could feel in each situation. And I'm sure that was Christian Science, to see the perfect man where others saw a sinning mortal man. And the correct sense, as Mary Baker Eddy says, heals. I thank God because it took prayer and more strength than I had at the moment to forgive. I wouldn't learn that anywhere but here. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol.
Several nights ago, we had a very windy night, and my garbage can disappeared. It took off, blew away somewhere. It was quite old, and it probably needed replacing anyway, but it was on Good Friday that the garbage man was Black Friday, when the garbage man was scheduled to come again, so I had to get a can. So I went to our local store, and the store was mobbed. There were so many people. It being Black Friday, there were so many people there. But as I walked in the door, there was a salesman standing right near the door, and I asked him where the garbage cans were, and he directed me, and I was able to get straight over to the area and chose my can and went to the checkout. And as I stood in the long line at the checkout, another checker waved. And I looked at her, and she gestured to come over. So I went to her line, and I went right out the door. She just checked me out, and I went right out the door. Nothing but the power of God could have done that. I was so grateful. There was no inconvenience. There was no, it was just God guiding and God caring for all of us. When we have some right thing to do, God takes care of it, and He takes care of every detail. I am so very grateful for the power of God and grateful for this church and how I've learned to live Christian Science, and I'm still learning it. I'm very grateful for the readings tonight, too. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty from California, go ahead.
During this Thanksgiving, we had been invited to go to Thanksgiving, and it was down the hill, which in our phrase means on the other side of the mountains, and you have to go through a path. And it had been raining, and so that morning, did my lesson and my watch, and we attended our service, and that's 8 o'clock here in California. And still wasn't quite sure. The rain didn't seem to be that bad, and we thought we might be able to go. And after the service, I remember looking out the window, and it started to snow. And well, that clinched it, and we knew that it was not a wise idea to try to go down the hill because the pass was at 4,000 feet, and we were at 3,000. So it was pretty obvious it was snowing pretty good up there. So I was so grateful that God gave us an answer so we hadn't gotten caught in the possibility of getting stuck in the snow up there. So anyway, I'm just so grateful that God protects us and that we can trust that. And everything worked out, and it turned out we got invited somewhere else real close. So we had a lovely Thanksgiving, and it was wonderful listening to the service that day, too. Thank you.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the beautiful readings tonight, Fairley. I've been reading an article by Rosalie Stamp. It's called Spiritual Consultations, and this particular section is consultation with the great physician. It mentions that at times we may wonder or wish that Jesus was here to help and heal. And he said that we should rather ask that what did Jesus call upon for his healing work? And he said three things: that it is the same eternal mind, the same invincible truth, the same great liberating love, which is with us all right now. So we can always remember that our true great physician always has a different diagnosis or verdict for us. His diagnosis is the perfection, the loveliness, the strengthened spiritual selfhood which we reflect. I'm so grateful for this. It's just a reminder. We've heard this many times before, but I like the way she puts it. God's verdict is the reality. It is the truth. And it is what we must all always keep in our hearts, even though mortal mind insists on its lies and its deceptions. I love Mrs. Eddy's treatment for every day, and it can be found on our website under articles. I love where she says that we must declare without number, I am perfect in God. To say often, I am perfect, joyful, triumphant, and complete. This, I feel, should be my diagnosis always and my verdict, and to hold this close in my thought, regardless of all the negatives that come. I'm so grateful for Christ Jesus' example. He didn't look at anything else but God. For Mrs. Eddy, what she did, all the struggles to keep the truth going for us, for everyone else in the past who has worked so hard to make this truth here now for us to follow. Grateful for this church, all the members, every little thing that we do to keep this going and to share it on the internet. Thank God for the rest of the world. Happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
A few things to read from our website, bulletin board, First Florida. I visited the Sunday school website this morning, Thanksgiving Day, and was so touched by the sweet gratitude of the children. God bless them and keep them. And thank you for posting this precious and pure site. And then Pennsylvania. The readings at yesterday's Wednesday evening meeting with the theme, that was last week's, theme, Jesus worked with gratitude and compassion, and so must we, were so beautiful and healing. Thank you. And then this was a Thanksgiving Day cards someone sent us from California. And he writes, I am so very thankful for the new life I have found at the Plainfield Church. Grateful for all of you, my Plainfield practitioner, Mrs. Eddy, and foremost for God. And then a testimony from California. Last Wednesday, before Thanksgiving Day, we had bad weather and the airport was packed. It was taking more than 1 hour just to enter the airport. And this person works at the LA airport. We actually worked on the main street heading to the airport because that's how far passengers had to walk to enter the airport due to all the traffic. Some of my co-workers weren't happy about this and kept on complaining. They were complaining about how cold and windy it was. I stayed warm and comfortable the entire 6 hours. We worked because I did my mental work. They were assuring that we were going to get sick, and I kept praying to God and thanking Him for His divine guidance, and I didn't get sick, and I finished my shift with a smile on my face, and I thank God for this. I also thank God for divine guidance because it's becoming more clear to me that the more I practice staying focused on the truth and doing my Christian Science work, and that I pray that people around me will have the desire to learn the truth and live a better life. I am also very grateful for translating the weekly lessons into Spanish. I feel like I get the VIP treatment because I get to study them before they become available on the website. I'm learning so much translating the lessons, and I am so grateful. Blessings to you all at Plainfield. And then another from Testimony from Florida. I was unexpectedly involved in a situation where certain individuals were intending to harm me for their own personal reasons. And I can tell you the predicament was bad enough, and after struggling and praying for a while to ameliorate the fear, I decided to call one of our practitioners from the Plainfield Independent Christian Science Church to support me in this confrontation with an apparent Goliath. Our enemies are actually forcing us to grow, as Mrs. Eddy says in her article, Love Your Enemies. Quote, love thine enemies is identical with thou hast no enemies. Whatever purifies, sanctifies, and consecrates human life is not an enemy, however much we suffer in the process. End quote. We must rejoice in the adversities that life experiences throw at us, as one speaker recently said on a Wednesday testimony meeting, since these apparent enemies are actually forcing us to grow up higher into levels of forgiveness, compassion, and humility, and we should rejoice when faced with unpleasant persecution of hate, malice, greed, and injustice. I must say now that I was well inspired and comforted by the Bible passage, quote, ye shall not need to fight in this battle. Set yourselves, stand ye still, and see the salvation of the Lord with you. Fear not, nor be dismayed. Tomorrow go out against them, for the Lord will be with you. End quote. That's Chronicles 20, 2 Chronicles 20. I can attest that after several months of struggling, studying, and praying with my practitioner's support, I have gone through a metamorphosis, turning and becoming more compassionate and friendly, less afraid and more confident, wiser, more loving, and a much better person than before this challenge. I was reminded today of a healing that I was so very grateful for, and it was one of the reasons why my husband and I, who were living in California at the time, came back to Plainfield. He was in school in California, and I found out I was pregnant with our first child. And I had tried to find a practitioner in the branch church that we had been attending that time, but no one was willing to take the case. At that time, they said it all ended up in a medical experience. So anyway, I called on a practitioner from the Plainfield Church who I had knew a little bit from childhood. She'd been a Sunday school teacher here, Mrs. Evans, and she gladly took the case, even though I was 3,000 miles away. And I remember the joy that I felt in calling her, and at that time I called her every morning. And every morning she gave me wonderful things to work with about how God is the deliverer, and that we can trust in him, and that this child is an idea of God, and he would bring it forth in his right and perfect time. And I also spent almost every day reading and praying and studying with Science and Health in the Bible. I was given many words to look up and study, and it was just a very joyous experience. And I have to say, I didn't look up anything else. In those days, there wasn't the internet, but I really didn't have the first thing about how to birth the baby. Anyway, the morning came when it's a beautiful May morning, and it seemed apparent the child was coming. And we did go to a hospital, and I went in the morning. By 2:30 in the afternoon, the child was born painlessly, freely, and I went home the next day. And I guess I thought, well, that's how it always is. But I've since learned that's not how it always is. And I'm just so grateful for that practitioner who helped me so and gave me such confidence in God. And after all, we are not personal creators. God creates it all, and He brings it to pass in beauty and in harmony and in peace. My times are in thine hands, the Bible. So I'm very grateful for that holy experience. I'm grateful for all that I've learned in this church and to be a member here.
Thank you.